Touchline podcast, and um, enjoyable to have you on. A fan of your work. I know that you and Aaron are going to be playing each other here the next 2 seasons. We were talking a little bit about that in the pre-chat. Chris, tell folks listening to this a little bit about your background and how you got to VMI.
Yeah, so I went to Lake Forest College. It's a small Division III school, about 40 miles north of the city in Chicago. Played soccer there all 4 years. It was probably my least favorable soccer option, but academically and what I was looking for in school, it ended up being right for me. And fortunately, we ended up being good my last couple of years there. But after that, my plan was to go into counseling. I have a psychology degree. I was planning on doing that, but I didn't want to go back to grad school right away. So I kind of was looking for something kind of to bide a year or something. At the time, I was doing a school counseling internship at a school downtown Chicago. And they were like, hey, why don't you come in and do a teaching assistant position with us for a year? It's like, cool. All right. So I started kind of pursuing that. Wasn't planning on doing anything with soccer. Kind of thought my days had been done. But my mentor and somebody who I played for him for 3 years, I ended up working for him for 5. He's the former coach of VMI. He kind of said, hey, why don't you come and coach a couple teams in the club that he was the director of coaching for? And I was like, all right, why not? A little extra money. And so I was doing that for a bit. And, at the time in Division III, he's like, hey, come and, do a scout for us, or come in, call a kid for us, and kind of just getting my foot in the door in the college game. I found out later, obviously, that this was his plan all along. But at the time I was just like, yeah, whatever. And so I did all of that for 2 years. I ended up being coaching. We were on the men's side at the time. And so I was coaching 3 youth teams, starting to help out and more responsibility each year, with the men's college team, with the team that the school I played at, and teaching during the day. And it finally got to a point that, I was obviously working, 7:30 in the morning, teaching, going to college practice and going to club practice in the night. And then, 3 or 4 or 5 club games and college games on the weekend. And finally I was like, I found myself at school doing recruiting work or doing soccer work. And it got to a point where I was finally like, okay, I think I want to pursue this full time. And so I sat down with Chris, who obviously we're both Chris, but I sat down with Chris Bergmann and kind of asked, how do we make this work? I took a pretty big pay cut to try to make this work. But I'm a big believer in pursue your passions. I don't, obviously money is important, but for me, it was about pursuing something that made me happy. The school thing was fine. It was a job. But the soccer thing was where I was passionate. And so for me, I ended up just, working as many club teams as I could at the time. I ended up getting onto the women's side of Lake Forest as well, helping out with both teams, being the first assistant for both teams. And, did that for a year. And then after that year, Chris ended up getting the women's job here at VMI. And I was very fortunate that he was willing to bring me down with him. Came down here for 2 years. We took over a program that was struggling pretty hard, and really worked to start to establish it in a lot of different ways, which I'm sure we'll talk about. I left here after 2 years. I thought it was time. I had been obviously with Chris Bergmann for 3 years as a player and 5 as a coach. And so it was definitely time for me to step out and kind of get my own experiences. And so I went to a school called Knox College in Galesburg, Illinois, to be the head coach. It was in the conference that I had played in at Lake Forest and coached in, obviously. So I was familiar with that territory, the conference, kind of a little bit with Knox and what their values were. And I really felt like it fit with who I was as a coach and what I wanted to do. And went in and took over a program that was starting to have success. And we had 2 pretty fun years there, obviously making the NCAA tournament 2 years. And then when Chris left to go to Stetson, I got a call about the VMI job. And, at no point was I planning on leaving Knox. I was really enjoying my time there and the people and the group we had. But this was the job that, my close friends in Galesburg knew that if this job came open, I wanted to pursue it, and fortunately it's worked out, and I'm finishing year one here at VMI.
I wrote down a few different notes here, Chris, that talking about, taking a pay cut, right? That you're sort of on one path. And I can completely relate, actually, because there's a part of my life where I was actually thinking about being a school counselor as well. And to me, that seemed like a really appealing lifestyle. And I got really far into a master's program, and I went and did an internship and a practicum, and I was working with middle school kids. Absolutely hated it. And I hated every second of it. And my wife, my family, people thought I was crazy to leave the program, at the time. And for me, that satisfaction of wanting to work with a little bit older demographic, right? That recruiting of the player, that building the relationship with the player. And I love what you said about, pursuing, what you love to do. It's hard. And I'm going through that right now, right? That I was headed this way. For anybody watching this, video, I was headed this way, and now I'm wanting to go this way and to get into coaching full time. Aaron went through that, early on in his career. I guess, what advice would you offer to somebody listening to this, that's maybe a takeaway to say, you know what, you can actually do it. And even if, it doesn't really matter your age or your circumstances or whatever, but you can actually pursue what you want to do in life.
Yeah, I think it's finding that passion. That's really important to me. Now, I will say I have some friends who view this completely differently, right? But for me, minus those maybe 2 years, when people ask, I tell people I haven't worked a day in my life. And that's really important to me, is feeling, a sort of validation when I come here that I'm enjoying it. It's more like a hobby than it is, a job. And obviously, you guys both know how hard we have to work to be successful or in this line of work. But I think, enjoying that is more important, and you feel more fulfillment. You feel like, you're getting something out of it. And that's important to me, not just going to a job where, you're working your 8 or 9 hours, you're punching your time card, and just doing it to do it. But for me, it's always on my mind. It's something that's important to me, and it's woven into my life. And so, if that's something that's important to you, I think it's always worth the risk. It's a scary thing to say, is like, okay, I'm going to take a pay cut, or I'm going to take this big risk. But I think the payout is unmatched, and certainly it was a risk. And fortunately for me, it's panned out really well. And that's not to say it hasn't had its triumphs and its hurdles. And I think that's what you have to understand is it's going to come with some hurdles, and it's just kind of managing those. But, I think it's having that end goal in sight of just being happy. And I think that's an important note, right? Is being happy and enjoying your life. And if that's something that can give that to you, then I think it's worth it. Yeah.
Oh, and I think players pick up when, if they know that we're going through the motions, right, or that we're unhappy, I think players are pretty perceptive to understand that. So, Aaron, bring you into the conversation.
Well, you talk about following your passion, and I think, we've all been there. The other thing that really touched on something that's so important to us is that we never stop thinking about it. And this is a job where you're at home, you're on the weekend, it doesn't matter. You are still thinking about, how do I get through to this player? What formation can we play? Or how do we deal with this? And if you're not passionate about it, that'll drive you crazy. But that passion drives you to want to do that more. And, you said, you got hurdles here and there, but the passion and the love for it allows you to deal with it a little bit easier. And talk about some of those hurdles that you've had, and talk about how you've been able to manage those hurdles, because you've coached at a lot of different levels here, males and females, and that's a pretty big that's a lot of history in a reasonably short amount of time.
Sure. Yeah. And I think you touched on it. I think it was figuring out where I fit in coaching. I think obviously I was coaching club. I liked it. I fell in love with the college side. I think it was figuring out, coaching men's or women's. And I think just my personality fits in the women's game a little bit better. I think it was figuring out just where I wanted to go. I'm very fortunate to have somebody who threw me to the fire pretty quickly. So for better or for worse, I was able to fail, and try things and learn by doing. And I know there's some potential assistant opportunities out there that maybe aren't like that. And I was fortunate to have somebody that believed in me, and let me fail and let me, get some opportunities that, maybe some other people my age at the time weren't getting. When Chris was coming down to interview at VMI, I actually ended up going and interviewing at a Division III school in Michigan. I wasn't sure that what was going to happen, if he was going to, bring me with, and those kind of things. And this is in late 2014, early 2015, maybe. And at the time, I went into that interview and was kind of spitting out all the things that Chris had done, right, or this and that. And when I've realized this years later is when I came down to VMI and got this real full immersion into the Division I level and this full-time day-to-day action of it and really learning. I felt like when I started doing interviews, and especially at Knox and those kind of things, I was able to speak about what I would do and what my philosophy was. And really looking back on that, would I have done an okay job or a fine job and learned on the fly? Sure, probably. But coming down to VMI as an assistant and getting this other experience where I was fully immersed into the women's game only, the Division I level at a place that's absolutely a different place than anywhere else in the country. I learned faster. And this, I've always said that my assistant time, even if it was just 2 years at VMI, was my most growth as a coach. And so then I felt prepared when I went and interviewed at Knox, a couple other places, and then coming back here to interview at VMI most recently. I was really able to say, this is what I feel like I can bring to the table. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it, versus just kind of spitting off what other people have said through my life. And I think part of it is just figuring that out. And that's a hurdle in itself, is figuring out who you are as a coach, figuring out how you work with players, how you're authentic, how you connect with people, and then those philosophies that drive your day-to-day actions. And I felt like when I came down here, I was able to take the things that we were doing that I really liked and say, okay, how would I modify that? What do I like about it? And the things that maybe I didn't necessarily agree with, or the things I wanted to change. And I would jot that stuff down in a book. I still have them. I'm looking at them over in my office here. My books from my time as an assistant here, where I've written down the things that I'd want to do as a head coach. And then that shaped, a blueprint we used at Knox and what we call our ideology here. And I think it's those hurdles, is just figuring things out on the fly. And like I said, it all started with having a mentor that was willing to throw me to the fire.
I think that you were in an awesome position with Chris Bergmann, and so you now recognize that. Because I always look at it as a head coach, my job is to prepare the coaches that work with me to do whatever they want. If that is be a head coach, or if that's to just stay as an assistant or go be an assistant at a Power 5 school or something like that. And so that's wonderful. So now you have that blueprint ahead of you. So everybody that you work with from now on is going to gain that experience and that knowledge.
It's funny you say that, because we had a recruit in our office recently, and the mom asked, okay, what are the chances that your whole staff's going to be together? And basically she said in, whatever it was, 4, 5, 6 years. And I was like, if I'm being honest with you, that number is probably pretty low. And if it is, it's because we've worked well together and whatever. But my job is to make sure that these guys are prepared as possible to move on to the next thing, whatever that means to them, right? And their desires and their wants. And that'll develop as we have a relationship. But I think, if I'm doing my job in 4, 5, 6 years, they've achieved a knowledge base and experiences that are allowing them to hopefully pursue whatever it is that they want, whether that be a head coach, an assistant at a bigger program, et cetera.
And they have to have some ownership in that. I mean, they have to have some ownership in your program, because if they don't feel that ownership, then how invested are they going to be in the program, in you, and everything that it takes to be the best that can be. And I mean, that philosophically, that's the way I look at it holistically as we're running our program, is everybody has to have ownership from the players, obviously, to the assistants, and that's how you can get, in my opinion, how you can get the best out of everybody. But
no, I mean,
no, finish. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think something we talk about a lot with our program is that it's our experience, not my experience. And a joke I've started recently is, that does apply to my staff, but our experience, not our experience, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But what I mean by our experience, not my experience, is that it's kind of exactly what you just said. Yes, as coaches, our job is to make those decisions and things, but I want input from everybody. It is everybody's experience here. And, like you said, if players and assistant coaches and the athletic training staff, if they're invested in what we're doing, we're going to move along through our process at a higher rate than if it's just me saying, this is what we're doing. So we get a lot of input from our players. I get a lot of input from my assistant coaches and how we drive what we do forward.
Yeah, relationships. So going back to what you said about, because we may have a lot of listeners that are young in their coaching career, and they're still trying to figure out what direction they want to go as it relates to male or female coaching. You obviously got to do both. What are the takeaways that you have from coaching males or coaching females, and why did you feel like you fit best in coaching the female game?
Yeah, I think for me, it was just about, this is about the level of voice I coach with, although my voice is half gone at the moment, so I apologize for that. But, I think for me, I talk about being an educator, and I really feel like I can connect with our group and stuff through conversation and through, I think, and a lot of that comes through their listening. And I don't know, my sample size on the men's side is coaching a program that I played for. And so that is a little bit tainted in a way, because it was in essence, some guys I played with, to be fair. But I think just the way my communication style, the way I coach, just fits with the women's side. But I do think, if I had to, I certainly don't think I will, but I think there's things I've learned over this period of time that, I think a lot of things do translate both sides. And part of that, I think at the end of the day, is more just figuring out who I was as a coach, and being authentic to that. And I think that translates a lot of different ways to whoever you're coaching. And I think it's more figuring about how you deliver your message and how you get people to invest and buy in. And coaching in general is just about the connections and relationships, like you just said. So, and that's not a male or female thing regardless. So, I think for me, I've always said that, but I think at the same time, it was me figuring out who I was and just being able to deliver that in a better way. And at that point, I was fully on the women's side. So basically what you're saying is males just don't listen. Well, that I didn't want to get to that, but there's that too. I mean, look, I was probably that way as a player too, so I can't talk too much.
Chris, you said a couple things that I thought were really interesting, especially as it related to, being an assistant coach, right? Talking about, kind of putting notebooks together, things you observed or saw, or, just a part of that experience that you had. And I think this is, my personal sort of philosophy talking here. I think coaches need to go and, do some of those, really tough jobs that assistants have at times. Right? Sometimes it's being the bad cop. Sometimes it's being the good cop. Sometimes it's picking up cones. Sometimes it's bagging balls. Sometimes it's, planning out the session. Sometimes it's just pulling a player aside and saying like, dude, like, what are you doing? What's going on? Because I think in a lot of ways, an assistant coach is sort of like the intelligence gatherer, or one of the intelligence gatherers, for a team, right? And they're feeding, if the relationship is there, they're feeding that information, up to the head coach or whatever, that he can make the best decision. So I really like that piece of it. I also like what you said about, if early on in your career, and I can again relate to this very much, that you sort of take these ideas that you get from different coaches and people that you really like working with, and this person might see the game one way, or this person might see the game one way, and you kind of sort of like a recipe, you kind of bring it all together. But at the end of the day, when you're leading a team or leading a program, it's yours, right? They may not necessarily be there to have a game model. So I'm wondering, for you, was it self-reflection? Was it kind of going back and looking through your notes? Was it sort of a moment where you go, okay, these are some fantastic ideas of how the game should be played, or how a program should be run, or player engagement, but what do I really think about this, or how do I really feel about it? And I'm wondering, when that moment sort of happened for you.
Yeah, I think it was at some point in my assistantship here. I had worked for a couple different head coaches, and I really got to a point where I was really reflecting on things, and really, like I said, for a long time it was, okay, this is what they had done. This is what we're doing. Versus I finally got to a point where I was really thinking about, is that how I would do it? Do I believe in that? Is that really, and that goes to our program philosophy, to our playing model, to our culture. There are plenty of things that I've taken from my previous bosses, plenty of things that just watching games on the weekend, could we potentially slide that into our system? Do we have the players for that? Those kind of things. And then a lot of things is just, what I believe in, but also then when you go to a new program. So when I went to Knox and come to VMI, it's what does the school believe in too, a little bit, right? And now with that, I wouldn't come to places where I didn't necessarily feel like our values didn't merge, right? VMI is obviously a way different place than anywhere else, and Knox being a pretty high academic school, a lot of the values that those places had merged what we believe in a program, and and I think those are all important. It's just taking all those things. You kind of noted that, right? It's just and it kind of goes back to, as if you're passionate about something, you're always thinking about it and ways to change it, ways to believe in it. And I think for me, it probably was during that assistantship here where I was really able to actually think about how would I drive this forward if this was mine? And again, it's things from all over the place, but it's also my beliefs and values and what I like about the game, and how you want to play, and what I got out of my college experience, and what other people have told me they've gotten out of their college experience, their playing experience, and kind of merging those different things that I think fit together to hopefully have players believe in. And but again, I think now that I am a head coach, it's taking the reflections of the players that have been in our program and saying, what are the things they would change about those things? Obviously it's overarching under our thing, but again, it's the players that have to buy into what we're doing and invest in that. And so if all of us are doing that, and so part of that is if they're giving me feedback, it's reflecting on that and how can we change some things.
Where were you like as a player? Aaron and I talk about this from time to time, that whatever it might be, I feel like I make a lot of things in my life a competition, and I think I'm just wired that way, to want to compete for different things, right? If I'm out for a run, if I'm out for a bike ride, if I'm whatever I'm doing, can I beat my time by 5 seconds, 10 seconds? And it's just sort of these mental games I play with myself, in terms of just that competition, because I'm out there by myself running. Usually I'm not competing against somebody in terms of a 5K or whatever. And I wonder what you were like as a player.
I was pretty fiery. I think I tell my players this all the time. I could do very few things in a game of soccer, but I could put a ball on a dime wherever I wanted to put it. If you asked me to run at a player, that wasn't going very well. The other thing is I was fit. So I could place the ball wherever I wanted, and I was fit. So typically I played. I played 4 different positions in 4 years, mostly defensive. I liked center back the best, but I was a 5'10" center back, so I had to make up for some things in certain ways. But but I felt good with my range of passing and my fitness, and then I tried hard for the other things.
It's interesting in coaches that I've spoken to, whether it be through the podcast or coaching courses or just, networking or whatever it might be, number of former goalkeepers, so Aaron and I fall into that category, but former center backs or defensive players that are coaching, male and female, has actually always sort of surprised me. And I think, and this is just my own personal opinion here, I think it's the way we view the game, right? I would much rather watch a game basically from the 6-yard box out versus, from the halfway line. I feel like I can see what is happening. I feel like I have a better understanding of the game, that sort of thing. I actually wish they would show games on TV that way. People think I'm probably crazy, but there's something to be said about how we saw the game or how we see the game that I think has actually translated for all of us that have had sort of that defensive type of role into coaching. I don't know, maybe I'm reaching here, but
no, I actually think that's 100%. I mean, it's funny you say that, because I think probably 65% of the time when I'm recruiting, I'm sat behind the goal versus, on the sideline with everybody else. And it's not that I seek that out necessarily, but something in my subconscious plants me there. I think I also grew up as the kid that was always asking questions to the coach, and sat there if I was off the field, sat there on the bench. And but I think as a center back and a goalkeeper, you're charged with organizing things and being vocal and kind of being a leader and ideally having an understanding of the game. And so I think that just progresses well. Typically a lot of the traits you see in coaches are with a center back or with a goalkeeper. So I think all of those things, I don't think anything you said was wrong.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you talk about taking things from head coaches and mentoring, your mentorship. What's one of the biggest takeaways that you have from Chris Bergmann? Like, that was your number one thing that he kind of impressed in you?
I think a couple different things, but partly because they were things I innately believed in. And obviously I played for Chris, so growing up with that too. But I think 2 things we stress a lot here is total development of the player. And I've kind of changed that in certain ways, but and then experience. I really believe it should be fun to play college soccer, and we tell that to every player we talk to and every player in our program. It should be fun. It doesn't mean, there's not going to be days where you're tired or it's hard or we're not going to push and challenge you, because we are. But it shouldn't feel like, crap, I have to go to practice today. Right. And that's really important to me. And I think that was something he drove home. And obviously neither of those things for the most part have to do with soccer necessarily, but those are the foundations of guiding players with the medium of soccer to being great people and great leaders. And that's something that's important to me. I mean, we're going to have 0.001% of our players go play professionally from here. Right. And VMI is a place that already kind of pushes leaders out there. But for us, we want our players doing all 4 of those things at a very high level, so that when they graduate here, they can look back on their experience here and say, I got the most out of my experience at VMI or at Knox when I was there, or, when Chris and I were here, or at Lake Forest. And those are two things that I think are just incredibly important. And they were things that I went to Lake Forest for and played for Chris and believed in. And like I said, we've kind of changed little things here and there about what those mean to our program. But I think the essence are things that I just really bought into and have carried along.
Yeah, I think one of the foundations of what we talk about here is the question that I want them to ask themselves every day is, am I finding joy in what I'm doing? Do I find joy in this every day? And exactly what you said, it's not going to always be easy. You're going to have challenges. It's going to be hard. But if you find joy in it, and you find joy even in those tough times, because at the end, it's going to pay off for you. I mean, nobody ever said it was going to be easy, but it's definitely worth it. And so that's really important to me as well. So, so speaking of VMI and your culture, you talked about what you mentioned, your VMI ideology.
Yep.
Give us a little brief explanation or crib notes or
Sure.
whatever those are called these days.
Yeah.
Cliff notes. There you go.
Cliff notes. Yeah, I think it's a document. We have two documents that, partially are the things that I've brought in saying, this is what we believe in, but also, it's stuff that the players have contributed to as well. It's kind of who we want to be. At the top of it says, this is who we are. This is what we do. And so every constituent in our program gets it and has an idea what this is about. And again, it walks through total development of the player. And for us, that's academic, athletic, social, and military. And then it walks through the things we just talked about, having a fun experience, everything we're doing, having a purpose, being more than a team, more than a team, but being a program. Every person having a role and what that means. It has our 10 standards on there that our players developed last spring, what they want to be about. Just all those kind of things. It explains what my commitment is going to be to you as a coach. It's the first page in our binder. And it's just a snapshot of who we want to be. And so as every new constituent comes into our program, they kind of have an idea of what we're about.
How does the military, because you were obviously, there's a handful of universities in the country that are in a similar situation as you guys. How does the military component fit in? Because you're right. Military is about leadership, and we try to foster leadership in our players, and you have that tenet built into your university. Yeah,
I think, I'm not sure we have time for the full answer in that, but the snapshots of those are, there's some really good things to it and some really challenging things that we have to overcome, for the fall season. So when we come to you guys next year, it'll be at the end of our Hell Week, right? The last day of our Hell Week is the day that we come to you guys.
You're going to be spitting fire though. That's going to be crazy.
So our freshmen are going through Hell Week and the start of what we call the rat line, which is, in some essences, it's what you see in the movies of getting yelled at and doing push-ups, and there's a whole lot more that goes into it. But, so basically right after we start our fall season, our freshmen are starting the rat line, but our upperclassmen are running it. So all of them are on their feet all the time. They're mentally drained. The purpose of VMI in some ways is to break you down, to build you up even stronger. The problem is our players are going through that, especially if we had 9 freshmen this year. 9 players in our team are going through the hardest time of their academic career. I don't want to speak to personal, but they're going through this adversity. But I think, like you said, it's about the leadership values, and it's designed to make you mentally grow and have to face adversity. I think those are some things. So just on our end, it's figuring out some of the periodization things. Our rats, our freshmen, as we call them, they did a 20-mile march yesterday. We had training today. It's figuring out some of those things. How do we work through some of that stuff, right? And there's so many different things that play into it, but it's just figuring out, how to make sure that we have a great leadership structure in our locker room. Something we tell recruits we talk to is look, every college coach in the country is going to tell you we need to be a family in the locker room, right? But for us, we absolutely have to be, or we cannot get through this place. We cannot be successful. And part of that is just because of the stressors that are going on day to day here, especially in the fall. And it's getting through. We have players from all over the country. It's how do we move them through this process so that they're being successful in all four of those components we talked about. It's about not bringing a hierarchy down from the hill, the academic center, to the locker room, right? The military inherently obviously has a hierarchical structure. It's making sure that our locker room separates that, right? The moment you come down from the hill, obviously a freshman needs to be able to tell, a junior, hey, you need to get stuck into that. You need to step left, step right. They need to be able to seek advice from a senior. And so we're not perfect at it, and it's hard to do. It's hard to separate that in a 10-minute walk or 8-minute walk from barracks. But it's about building that into our culture, that soccer is just as much a priority as the academic piece, the military piece. And to do that, we have to be this group that believes in one another, and we foster this environment where people can get better in it versus coming down to the locker room and fearing getting yelled at by their senior mentor, or fearing, getting in trouble on the hill for something they said to somebody at soccer. Right. And it's a challenge, and those are things, but I think you're also working with, just some of the best people, here. That's one of the reasons I came back. Incredibly motivated individuals. We talk a lot about delayed gratification with them. I say, it's not coffee and roses and flowers and things up front. But what you get out of it is unmatched. But it's getting them through that hard part up front so that they can have the experience that's great. Something I don't know if you guys know is you aren't required to commission at VMI. It is a full military structure, just like the academies. But you don't have to serve if you don't want to. We can also commission into pretty much any branch. So those are us and the Citadel are similar, but those are the differences from the academies.
That's pretty cool. I didn't realize that you didn't have to commission. So you kind of have the best of both worlds. When you get an education at VMI, you can be commissioned at the point of graduation or not. Wow. One of the things that you said I really liked, and this is something that I try sometimes in vain, but and you will have an interesting perspective too, given the hierarchy structure that you have there. You said that you want everybody in your program to feel a connectedness or an impact on the program. And that's what I talk about to our group all the time. We had 28 people on our roster this year, and roughly 28 people every year. I want player number 28 to feel as impactful as player number 1. What are the things that you do? Is there anything in specific that you do to help foster that environment?
Yeah, I think, first and foremost, the first thing that every player hears about this place is we really believe every player has a role, right? And that's from a 40-goal-a-year scorer, which we obviously didn't have this year, to a starter, to somebody who's just working themselves into the rotation, or maybe somebody who hasn't played. But if any of those players are falling off the train, we start to derail a little bit. Now, our job as coaches and potentially some of our leadership is to help players who, if they're laying in bed at night wondering what their role is how do we help them find that? And I think something we talk a lot about is over 4 years, your time is going to, or your role is going to change, right? That's life. It's going to go up and down and up and down. And it's how do you adapt when that changes, and the examples we give is maybe you've started, the first 10 games of the year, you pick up an ankle knock. Your role has changed, but you're no less important to our group, right? And there's still things that you can do within that structure to help us, move our success forward. And then flip that, obviously, if, maybe you haven't played a ton, but it's coming in and being ready to impact us right away. I think a lot of that is done through making sure that every player has a say, has an investment, feels like they can come in and talk with us and talk with the upperclassmen. We have our players meet with us once every 2 weeks, just very informally. Hey, what's going on? If you want to talk about soccer, we can, but we don't necessarily force it. If you want to talk about, I don't know, Cardi B, we can do that too. I'm not sure I would know what to say. Exactly right. But
I got it.
But I want them to just feel a comfort of talking to us, and we seek input on a lot of different things. And I'm a pretty transparent dude. I'll give them a lot of information, and I want that feedback of what they think. And currently, even currently, we're investigating certain ways to even get more of that feedback. I think just making sure every player, and like you said, from 1 to 28, feels an investment in what we're doing, even if that doesn't mean 90 minutes a game. And that's really important to us.
Chris, don't let Aaron fool you. He's actually the president of the Cardi B fan club, the Athens, Ohio chapter. So I wonder. What you're describing, Chris, probably isn't for everyone, right? And that's not a criticism, right? I mean, I had a good friend of mine growing up who went to West Point. And I remember him telling me about that experience and just how different it was than, going to a small liberal arts college that I went to, and the demands, put on him. I want to kind of jump into the psychological side, right? Because we talk a lot about that on this podcast, of the mental, sometimes fatigue and exhaustion, and the pressure, and the balancing act that not only we as coaches have to do, but as players. And I wonder how open players are. You mentioned that a little bit, that, having that time for them to come in and talk about whatever's on their mind. But it seems like they're pulled in a lot of different directions, as any, athlete at that level would be. I wonder how willing or how open they are to share just some of their struggles, and especially as a, say if you're a freshman coming into this for the first time, right, this is probably like, whoa, my head's spinning right now, right?
Sure.
I wouldn't last a day. I'll be very honest. I wouldn't pass the fitness test, but I just wonder how open they are, about that, and sort of sharing things with you.
Sure. I think it certainly differs on the kid, right? But we try to make sure there's as many structures in place that they can go to. I think it's, going back to assistant coaches, I think it's great to have different types of people on your staff. Something that I really had to learn as a head coach is not everybody's going to like me, and be okay with that. Now, obviously, with the note that, you're still going to work as hard as you are with any other kid to try to connect with the kid and make that better. But they may feel more comfortable going to one of my assistants. They may feel comfortable going to our athletic trainer. Part of that is why we really work to have no hierarchy in the locker room, so that they feel comfortable going to the upperclassmen. VMI has a structure in place that they have a senior mentor as a freshman, and typically it's within our team. So hopefully going to that, and it's just making sure they're aware of all the different places that they can go to get that off their chest, and just making it so that that process is comfortable for them. And making sure that one bad experience doesn't ruin their belief in that. And I think in a place where sometimes they feel like they shouldn't speak up, we have to kind of force it a little bit. And I think that's partially through just checking in with them and making sure that the questions we ask are ideally getting the responses out, and part of that's just being here for this, I'm going into my 4th year at VMI, obviously broken up, but just knowing what the process is here and what the stressors are. And, and every player that we have that comes in through the rat line handles it in a different way, right? We have players that laugh through it. We have players that cry through it. We have players that you would have no idea they had a personality because they're just pushing through it. And it's just trying to connect with them in their way and how they're going to let you know that things are going on. But also making sure that they have access to their support systems and us and in different ways. So,
yeah. In terms of the training ground and match day, I always like to ask coaches, what are you like? I will use this example. I was at a training session yesterday, and we were on a break, and I kind of thought to myself, I'm really engaged in this session. And I was working with some younger players or whatever, but I was really enjoying myself. And, I tend to be a little chatty, a little, really giving a lot of praise and things like that. That doesn't always match what people see from me on match day. And part of it too, it depends on the age group I'm working with, right? My high school team is going to look a little different than a U9 group, a club team. But I always like to ask coaches, what are you like, on the training ground, but also on match day?
Yeah, I think on a training ground, my voice doesn't get much more than this. I think it's a fun atmosphere, fairly energetic, but it's that of an educator. We're by no means strict, but obviously we have intentions of getting everything we can out of a session. And but like I said, we talk about college soccer being fun, but also at a place like VMI, things need to be fun. It needs to be some sort of a release, and that's obviously it's a balance, right? You still need to have the drive and intensity of a training session that you're preparing to play for the weekend. But I think it's having that. I think for me, it's that of an educator. Now, similar to what you just said, on match day, it may be. It depends, right? Like I think for the most part, when communicating with our players, it's like that. But I definitely am a little bit more passionate, invested. I think figuring out how to utilize that is still something I'm working through. But but I think that's as I talk about finding my authentic self, I also don't think that's a bad thing. I think the reason I can connect with some of our players and things is because of how passionate and invested I am. But during a match, I probably walk half of what the players do, because you'll see me pace up and down and up and down. And I've tried to sit. I tried really hard. And so far that is not working. I like to pace. It allows me to chat with all the players on the bench that are there. And it allows me to, and occasionally allows me to yell at a referee. My assistants would say I just downplayed that by a lot, but something I'm working through too.
Chris, I'm with you. I have ants in my pants. I've tried, and I usually sit for probably a minute or two, and then I'm up, and same thing. I'm pacing back and forth and moving around, and a lot of it, quite truthfully, for me, it's just become observational. And I'll interject obviously when appropriate and have a conversation or try to have a conversation with an official, but sometimes that's, falls on deaf ears, I guess you could say. So something new that we've been doing, and Aaron, I'll let you ask this question about the clubs and the teams and the, who we support. So go ahead, Aaron.
But we're all passionate about soccer and we love it. And, we talk about the psychosocial part and how we interact, but the fun part of it is supporting a team. So who do you support? Who do you love? Who do you live and die by every kick of the ball from?
Yeah, I'm a huge Manchester United supporter. You can see, if I turn my camera, you could see the flag here in my office. But obviously, dire times at the moment. But kind of that was the first club I was just exposed to, really. And just seeing that growing up, it was obviously brilliant and something I fell in love with. And my best friends, who I played club ball with and went to a rival high school of mine, kind of we shared that same experience. And so for me, it just fell in that love. I've always been a huge men's national team guy and women's national team supporter. And obviously on the men's side, we're trying to figure some things out as well. but for me, it's been that passion, and it relies on kind of where I fell in as a kid, and that won't change.
So do you have a favorite memory of supporting Manchester United?
Yeah, probably in the Champions League final when John Terry slipped. That's because we had a couple of buddies of mine had started at Buffalo Wild Wings, watching the game, and I for some reason had to go home, and I made it like just in time for the penalties. And like was running into my house, and at the time it was these big tubed TVs, and or at least that's what we had, and
it wasn't that long ago.
Agreed, but well, that's what we had, and flipped it on, and I guess I made it sound like it was like the 1800s, but no, but and just seeing that moment was pretty cool. I have vague memories of Ole and those times, but I was pretty young at that point. So.
Oh, I remember that vividly because I wasn't young at that time. But the greatest experience is the most recent experience. So it was awesome watching Liverpool smash Man United yesterday.
Yeah.
Well, you can, Rogers. It's all going to come crashing down.
Man, it's interesting, just obviously growing up as a United supporter, but being a fan of just soccer and good football in general. It's watching Pep do what he's done and the intricacies of that, and then watching Klopp do what he's done and the intricacies of that. It's hard being these two clubs you've grown up being told to hate, and watching them play this football that's just so intriguing, and you want to learn about, and it's like, okay, and then obviously on the other end, United not necessarily having a great identity at the moment is interesting, and it will never change my support, but it is interesting to watch this football being played that's just so impressive with these clubs that you were just indoctrinated to hate.
Well, I can appreciate that. I've supported Liverpool since the late 80s. So I've been through a long time of lack of identity is on the field. And so I appreciate that, but I can never appreciate Man United, even when they win all the leagues. But I do appreciate David De Gea because he is every time Liverpool and Man United play, the guy pulls out them. I mean, he's an awesome goalkeeper. He pulls out some of the most amazing saves.
So let me ask you: do you think that was a foul on De Gea, Van Dijk?
Immediately when it happened, I said, "Yeah, that's the ref's got to call that." And then when he didn't call it, I was like, "Oh, okay." And then when he went to VAR, I was like, "They're going to call it back." I don't know. I mean, I could see it either way. I mean, if they didn't call it. Because Van Dijk was playing the ball. I mean, he never even knew where De Gea was. The only thing that made it a foul, I think, is that De Gea obviously can use his hands, so he was just that little bit above Virgil's head, and when he had a grasp of it, then Virgil's body barged him over, and that's kind of what made him drop the ball. So in that sense, I could see, but if the result didn't go 2-0 to Liverpool, then I'd have said, no, that was definitely not a foul.
Well, and it's funny because, you go through that game and it's like, okay, that point is not going to matter. That foul call, it's because, you obviously dominated play and had the chances, but there's a couple moments, right, where it's United has a chance here and there.
Absolutely.
And maybe 10 minutes of play, and it's like, that might come back to bite them. And so that's why I was curious.
No, absolutely. I mean, I agree with you. Absolutely, it could have, and but I think it could go either way. But I mean, the two goals that Liverpool scored that were disallowed in the first half were unbelievable goals. Yeah, unbelievable goals.
100%. And Jason, you're Everton, is that right?
That's the cross I have to carry in life, Chris.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I don't even know what to say at this point. I haven't won a trophy in so damn long. I don't know. And I'll say this. I hope that things will continue to get better under Ancelotti. I think he's realizing that that this is going to be a project, and there's guys that are in the first team that quite truthfully don't deserve to play in the Premier League right now, and he will gradually weed them out. They may end up on other clubs as bench players or whatever, but there's only a handful of people, and he's identified a couple guys he wants to build around. So I'm curious to see. I think for Everton, honestly, I would be happy if they're consistently challenging for a Europa League spot. In that conversation, I mean, if they would, all the everything, all the stars align, and they catch a year like Leicester, and, can do no wrong from a few seasons ago. But I've told the story 1,000 times, but it was for the American players that were on Everton what drew me in. As a goalkeeper, Tim Howard, I mean, is someone that I have great respect for, and so it's funny what gets you in the door as a supporter, but then why you stay, and you fall in love with it. You fall in love with everything, and I've actually, people have asked me, friends here locally, they're like, would you ever consider like supporting another Premier League team? I'm like,
it's too late now.
Yeah, I mean, you just, once you're attached to a club, you can't do it, And I mean, there's other teams that I like watching, and Chris is exactly what you said. I appreciate what Pep does. I appreciate what Klopp does. They're fantastic football managers. Period. The end. But at the end of the day, my loyalty, my highs, my lows are going to be with the club that I support. But yeah, I tell people this all the time too. I'm equal opportunity. If there's a soccer match on, I don't care what it is, who it is, whatever. I mean, I've watched the Australian League because I wasn't able to sleep one night.
I was about to say, that tells me about your sleep schedule.
Yeah. I'm up and I'm like, you know what? There's soccer on? Okay. I've watched the Indian League. I mean, whatever. I'll watch it. I'm, so easy as long as it's on, I'm cool. So, but yeah, I mean, it's funny though, the absolute contradiction that this is going to sound like. I mean, I love to watch Ajax play. I was watching their match from yesterday, earlier today. They're just fun to watch. And they're just, I think that the fact that they play a lot of young guys and these guys that they eventually sell and, whatever, but what they've built through their academy is incredibly fascinating to me. I like watching Bayern Munich just because I like their style. Again, they're kind of like me and you, that they're kind of figuring that out lately. But yeah, I mean, there's teams that I appreciate and whatever, but, in terms of that sort of live and die, it's unfortunately Everton football.
Fair enough.
So, Chris, if people want to connect with you and follow along with what's going on at VMI, how can they do that?
Yeah. Obviously my email's online on the VMI website. My Twitter handle is Coach CHT VMI. I'm active, sort of. I do a lot of retweeting and reading. I don't do a whole lot of tweeting, but certainly can connect with me there. And if you want to DM me and chat, I'm always about that and can set up phone calls and things. So I'm sure I have an Instagram, but I don't really know how much I use it or how to work it. So so Twitter or email is probably the best place.
Cool. Well, Chris, it has been a very enjoyable chat, man, and so glad that we were able to get you on the show, and long time coming for sure, but would love to have you back sometime, and just really, really good stuff, man. Appreciate it.
Awesome. No, I appreciate you guys, and I know we had been talking about it for a while, so I was glad we were able to make it work.
Yeah, and make sure the listening audience circles the date on the calendar when you guys play each other. We'll be sure to do like a special post game podcast. Here we are with the managers on the sideline.
Yeah, do it live from Athens, Ohio.
I don't even remember the date. Do you?
August.
Better.
20.
No, I do. It's on
I have it here.
It's on my desk at home. If I was in my office, like Chris, I could tell you, I'm just sitting in the dungeon of the house.
August 23rd, 2020. Circle the date.
Awesome.
Cool, man. Well, yeah, I hope I'm able to get down and see that in person. And yeah, I'm sure at some point we'll have a chance to meet up and actually meet face to face. So good stuff.
No doubt.